And Socrates gives this parable of metals, though he says he's hesitant to even speak it. But basically, I'm going to read the passage because the passage is very interesting. So this is the passage. Your words seem hesitant on your lips, Socrates. Well, you will not wonder, I replied, at my hesitation when you have heard. Speak, he said, and fear not. This is an engagement between Glaucon and Socrates. Well then, I will speak, although I really know not how to look you in the face, or in what words to utter the audacious fiction, which I propose to communicate gradually, first to the rulers, then to the soldiers, and lastly to the people. They are to be told that their youth was a dream, and that the education and training which they received from us an appearance only. In reality, during all the time they were being formed and fed in the womb of the earth, where they themselves and their arms and appurtenances were manufactured, when they were completed, the earth, their mother, sent them up. And so, their country being their mother, and also their nurse, they are bound to advise for her good, and to defend her against attacks. And her citizens they are to regard as children of the earth, and their own brothers. Glaucon says, You had good reason, he said, to be ashamed of the lie which you were going to tell. Socrates continues on. True, I replied, but there is more coming. I have only told you half. Citizens, we shall say to them in our tale, you are brothers, yet God has framed you differently. Some of you have the power of command, and in the composition of these he has mingled gold, wherefore also they have the greatest honor. Others he has made of silver, to be auxiliaries. Others again, who are to be husbandmen and craftsmen, he is composed of brass and iron, and the species will generally be preserved in their children. But as all are of the same original stock, a golden parent will sometimes have a silver son, and a silver parent a golden son. And God proclaims as the first principle to the rulers, above all else, that there is nothing which they should so anxiously guard, or of which they are to be such good guardians, as the purity of the race. They should observe what elements mingle in their offspring, for if the son of a golden or silver parent has an admixture of brass and iron, then nature orders a transposition of ranks, and the eye of the ruler must not be pitiful towards the children, because he has to descend in the scale and become a husbandman or artisan, just as they may be sons of artisans who have an admixture of gold or silver. In them are raised to honor and become guardians or auxiliaries. For an oracle says that when a man of brass or iron guards the state, it will be destroyed. Such is the tale. Is there any possibility of making our citizens believe in it? So that passage is about 2.5, 3 paragraphs long. It comes right at the end of book 3. And it's a little confusing to me. I am not sure whether Socrates is hesitant to speak it because it would be a total inversion or corruption of what the Athenian democracy is right now. And it would relegate certain people who have high status to very low status. I suspect that this is the case, and one of the reasons he advocated this, one of the reasons why he was made to drink hemlock. He was put on trial and made to drink hemlock. This would have very negatively affected many of the Athenian jurors who were also responsible for running the state. But on the other hand, he offers this as a deception. So this is the deception that he would give to the auxiliary class in testing them on whether they would cast off their responsibility to the state. And so I'm somewhat confused here with this passage as to its meaning. Is he offering it as what he thinks the state actually should be, but is hesitant because he doesn't want to get killed for basically offering the overthrow of the current democracy? Or is he offering this as a deception to the auxiliary class as a test to see what their response is in regards to their responsibility to the state?
Yeah, I agree with this concept of a foundational myth. I think what's really telling is when, and this is kind of subtle, is the order in which this knowledge is passed down. So first it's given to the guardians, then it's given to the auxiliaries, and then finally it's given to the plebeian class or the workers, the craftsmen and the husbandmen, etc. I think the reason, of course, this is done is because the guardians and some of the auxiliaries, of course, being learned in the ways of philosophy and truth, will know that this is a myth. It's a civilization, society enforcing myth that gives structure to the system, but that it should not be taken literally. But those that aren't trained in those arts will not know this, and so therefore will take it literally. And so this is kind of like I don't know, maybe to use a little bit of a crude term, it's like a shit test. You give it to people basically, and those people who are destined for greater things will probably reject it and say, no, that's just a myth, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to be relegated to these certain classes or whatever. I'll do what I want. But the natural slave, so to speak, the natural craftsman, the one that has the soul of iron or of brass, will accept this. And this is kind of how you weed one of the ways you can weed out the aristocrats from the plebeians. I mean, maybe it's a bit harsh, but I think it is a good test. If people believe in those sorts of things, it kind of automatically designates them as lower class, so to speak. Obviously still important to the society. You need those people, you depend on those people, but nevertheless lower in the class hierarchy, the caste system, whatever you want to call it. So that's what I wanted to say.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's what's referred to as the noble lie, and men like Karl Popper, you can echo that, decry it. Lee Strauss, these are all Marxists and heavily influenced by Marxism. They think it's they hate it. It's sort of perplexing, I think, because almost everybody would nowadays, you could think, who is educated, at least, I suppose, I use that term loosely, but would see the absurdity of this tale. So does that mean that almost everybody is a guardian?
No, because
if I walked up to somebody and said, you were formed in the earth, the womb of the earth, they would tell me that Isis is that way.
But that's because they're trained to believe that. Basically what I'm trying to say is that you're regarding human beings as they are now in society in a certain context. What I'm saying is that basically, like, you can think about it this way, okay? So there are still all sorts of kind of superstitious things, although rationalism in the modern age has eliminated most of these because it thinks that they're unhealthy. In my opinion, they are beneficial in many cases, but because basically, like, instead of recognizing that foundational myths have their place and are actually beneficial, especially to the lower classes, one rejects it. And so the new prejudice, especially in the lower classes, is kind of a rejection of all myth and all religion. But in turn, that makes them even more crude than if they would have believed in religion. So it's kind of like basically the rejection of the lower classes of this kind of a myth would make them even more low status than the low class people in Plato's ideal state that accept the myth, because they're basically accepting an even worse myth, which is that they are like everyone else. They're basically accepting the myth of democracy, which, right, although not what I'm trying to say is, like, not all myths are created equal. And so to believe, for instance, in a kind of myth of hierarchy, of caste, is much more in accordance with the truth than to believe in a myth of equality and of everyone can be a Leonardo da Vinci, a Mozart, etc., like Lenin's phrase. it's it shows you're much more intelligent basically if you believe in a myth that has some truth to it than if you believe in a myth that has absolutely no truth. And I think that the myth of the metals does have some truth in it. I do believe there are people, of course, and we know this now, with genetic science and psychometrics, IQ testing, and things like that. That people are born with a certain, you could say, soul, with a certain predefined characteristics that they can overcome to some degree, but not completely. And so the myth of the metals has a lot more truth in it than the myth of democracy, which almost everyone believes in today, except for the really high class people. So of course, okay, maybe that's a little bit biased. Oh, we don't believe in democracy, or most of us don't, so therefore we're the high class people. But there's also people, there's even liberals or libertarians who don't believe in democracy. They don't necessarily have to be us. But I think that like every age has its foundational myth, but foundational myths are sometimes more dysfunctional than previous foundational myths. And I think specifically our foundational myth, that of freedom for all, the kind of French Revolution ideals, etc., the noble savage, for instance, Rousseau's myth, are much more damaging than the myth of metals. So, yeah, that's my piece. That was a bit long-winded.
No, that's good, because these discussions are good, and they're really what I think the purpose of this podcast is. So I'm glad that we were able to get into this. I take it.
But keep it close or you'll lose yourself before you might feel like you're running, and you could run for 1,000 miles or more. You can't see what you're chasing, and reaching out to a future life you're sure.